You are listening to the new man beyond the macho jerk and the new age wimp. Your host is men's coach Tripp Lanier.
Does money consume a lot of your attention? Do you wish you could make money from doing what you love? And are you ignoring your calling in life because you're so focused on being responsible? Paul Ollinger busted his ass, cashed out of Facebook, and then became a stand-up comic. Today, we're going to talk about money being a major motivator, how the pursuit of a stress-free life can burn us out, and why committing to success often makes us weak.
How are you?
I'm well, man. You got a camera?
Good.
Do I get to see you, or is this? Let's go full frontal camera. Let's do the real thing.
It's kind of a commitment. Hang on one second. Do you use the video, or you just use this?
I don't use the video. It's just audio. I just find it easier.
Sure you don't. You don't.
I use it for private. Just private stuff. This is my private collection.
Okay, hang on a second. Okay, so we're good to go.
I'm good. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. You're in North Carolina?
I am. I'm in Wrightsville Beach.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm in Atlanta.
Yeah, very good. How is Atlanta? I used to live in Tallahassee for a long time, so I used to go up to Atlanta quite a bit. But
yeah, Atlanta's it's starting to get a little warm, but all's good. Life's good.
Like plus 90 for 8 months out of the year, and then down below 30.
Yeah. We don't get that nice breeze off the ocean that you guys have there.
Cool. I wanted to talk about money. I want to talk about, your transition to doing the things that you love. That's a lot of the stuff that I work with guys that have gone, they've done really well for themselves, but they're kind of transitioning into, okay, what the hell do I want to do with my life now? So those are a lot of guys that I talk to. And then there's a lot of guys that are listening that are like, well, one day I hope to get there. Where I can enjoy my life. So I want to kind of pick through some of that and get your ideas on that kind of stuff. And
don't wait till you get there to enjoy your life is the answer to that one.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Well, let's just jump in. When it comes to money, did you have money growing up? Did you come from a well-to-do family? What was your background there?
I came from a very stable family that we never missed a meal, but things felt tight. I'm one of 6 kids. My dad had a job with the power company, Georgia Power. And my dad is just a very frugal guy, and we never had things that we didn't need. It's interesting. I interviewed him for an episode of the podcast. He's now 92 years old. And I wanted to talk to him and get in his head what was it like to raise 6 kids on a relatively modest salary and to deal with all that stress. And he was like, stress? I was never stressed. I was like, you got to be kidding me. It was like, I felt like you were always stressed about money. And maybe that's either me interpreting my youth in a way that wasn't actually the case, or him sort of rationalizing what it was like for him as a dad. But yeah, money was, I was motivated to make a lot of money when I was a kid because I didn't want to stress about money like I felt my parents did. And according to my dad, it never happened. So maybe I was motivated by the completely wrong things.
It seems to be the motivator, right? Even the guys that I talk to, or the guys that I coach that come from money, there's still this thing like, well, I got to make my own money, right? Mm-hmm. They have to prove something there. And then there's guys that didn't grow up with it, like, to hell with this. I never want to feel like I can't get the guac on the burrito. Like, I want to be
funny.
I don't ever want to have to say no or think or hem and haw about that stuff. I just want to have that flexibility and be able to do that thing and not stress out that stress of worrying about money. And so, all of us to a degree stress out about it, but how you said it really motivated you. What do you like? Give us a window into that world when you were young and you're like, to hell with this, I'm going to make a lot of money. Was that the end game? I'm going to make a bunch of money.
Well, I think I just wanted, there's so many interesting things about money that everybody defines rich as basically twice what you have. If you make $100,000 a year, you think the guy making 200 has it made. And when I was a kid, I wanted that thing that was just beyond what we had, but was reachable. Like I wanted to drive a Buick LeSabre, instead of like a Toyota. Like I was like, that's rich, man. I want a Buick. I wanted a house in the next nicest suburb. Like that was making it. And so I wanted to have enough money to afford name brand Advil instead of Walprofen, like that was my guac on the burrito. So like we all have these weird things about money where we don't even know how lame our dreams are until you get to the next level and your dream just moves that much further out there. And I think I wanted enough money to just avoid stress. And the crazy thing about that is, as anybody who's made any money knows, it's not how much money you make. It's the balance between how much money you make and how much you feel you need that drives the stress in your financial life. Like you can make $1 million a year and still be stressed over cash because your appetites have grown so much. You're just consuming way too much. So I'm trying to be very aware of, how much we have versus how much we want. And I think that's an awareness I think a lot of people should try to get in touch with before they start thinking about, I want to make this much money. Oh yeah? Well, why? Right. What is that going to provide for you and for your family?
I think we just automatically assume that there's an exoneration, right? Oh, if I get to that level, I won't have to deal with the bullshit of whatever I'm dealing with now. There's this place where I get to go beyond the velvet rope and it's easy street. And then we get there and it's like, well, wait a second, this isn't easy street, but that next level is easy street. Yeah. I just got to get to that next level, baby. And then we're good. And then shit, okay, well, I must not be there yet because I still got to deal with this thing. And I got the gray hairs growing on my dick now. I was like, okay, the next level is where it's at. And, but it just never really happens, that exoneration. So what you're saying is like, we got to look at our thinking and say, if I'm really just trying to escape life, we're always going to be trying to outrun something. Does that fit? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I think we're coded to want more. We're always coded to want more. And the more you have, the more you start hanging out with people who have more. And then you go, oh, wait, this Audi's cool, but I think I want that Porsche. And you get that Porsche and you start hanging out with dudes who have their own planes. And you're like, oh, a plane would be really, really nice.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think you've got to be really disciplined about saying, yeah, a plane is nice, but it doesn't fit into what it is that I'm trying to accomplish with my life. I'm trying, like I had a great run at Facebook. I made a great sum of money, and it was more than I ever dreamed of. And those boundaries, your horizon just keeps moving forward. That's what horizons do. And so it's when I quit to do stand-up comedy, I had to say, okay, I'm making a conscious choice to put the money on hold indefinitely because the priorities that I have in my life right now are about creative exploration. Oh, and by the way, my wife had to be on board with that as well, because it's not just what I want, it's what we both want together for our family that's going to determine our expenses and our financial needs going forward.
There's a lot of awareness in that, right? Which is, wait a second, I enjoy the creative process. I enjoy stand up. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's not just, I think we can just get so myopic in our culture where it's just money. Like that's what I do with my life. I don't have any other meaning. I don't have any other thing. It's just this, I'm going to go, somebody threw the Frisbee and I'm going to go get it. And it's just money, money, money. And without that awareness, like, wait a second, what do I actually enjoy? What brings my life some sense of enjoyment and meaning? And it sounds like for you were really clued into that. But I think a lot of guys fall into the trap and say, wait a second, I have to make money from my passion. I can't. They don't give themselves permission to pursue things unless it's going to pay the bills. And I run into that a lot with guys where it's just like, yeah, that's just not in the cards for me. It's either or. Either I go make a bunch of money, or I go do my passion and I live in my car somewhere. Did you ever have that sense as you were going through that it was an either or scenario, that you do what you love or you go make money?
Those questions are really worth asking. And there's also part of our culture that says, hey man, you got to chase your dream. You got to live your purpose and all that kind of stuff. And your number one purpose should be to take care of yourself and your family. And your passion definitely comes second. That doesn't mean you can't do that and still live your values. But not everybody needs to go and chase their dream at the expense of everything else in their life. I think that, there's a lot of people. I see guitars hanging, on the back of on back of your wall. I wouldn't suggest, hey, Tripp, you got to go all in on the music at the expense of every other thing in your life that you enjoy doing, or just ignore it completely. You should find place in your life for the music and for your passions after you've figured out how you're going to make a good living, and also find joy in what you do to make a living.
Right.
The research really shows that you derive passion from what you're good at, not just what you think is super cool. And if you think you're going to make money at your passion right away, in 99.9% of cases, you're sorely mistaken. Even if your passion is business, the statistics for new businesses are brutal. Entrepreneurship is a long road, just like the arts are. And if you want to be great at something, you got to dedicate 10 years to trying to figure out how to do it well before you can even really think, gee, am I good enough to even earn a living doing it, to deserve to earn a living doing it,
right,
to deserve to have people pay to come and experience you performing whatever that is, whether it's cooking or writing or comedy, whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of us want to find that shortcut. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to go through the uncertainty. We don't have to put look like a moron, being a noob. And so we're looking for that shortcut of like, how do I get to the good stuff and not have to put any work into it? And whether that's, like you said, whether it's in the arts or it's in business or whatever, there's a lot of the hack. It's like that hack mentality instead of, all right, you got to go through the suck for a while and figure this out. But I think that's where most of us get so fixated on these outcomes: a bunch of money, living in that neighborhood, the car, the plane. And we don't look at like, what's the process that I enjoy doing every day? Do I enjoy waking up and doing this thing every day? And it's cool. Yes, I want to make the money too. It's not, at a certain point, it's not that enjoyable if it's not supporting you, like you said. If it's not supporting you and your family, and it's going to be a drain there. But most of us, we get fixated on those outcomes instead of that process.
That's key. How long did you do your podcast before you felt like people noticed?
Oh man, I don't know. We were in the wild west of the podcasting days, so it was 12 years ago. I don't know. I don't even know if people still, I don't know. I don't even think about that stuff. I've just kind of put my head down and do it. I think there was one time somebody sent an image of, we were beating Oprah in some ranking system on there. And I was like, all right, let's go. Let's go, Oprah. I'll take you on.
But if you started it thinking, okay, this has to work, and it has to work right from the get-go, you wouldn't have made it past episode 3.
No.
No,
and I'd done enough. Like, I'd been a musician. I'd done enough stuff where I'd worked on records for a year and then get them pressed, and then they sit in my garage. Like, I've had enough of those failures of, like, I've chopped a lot of trees down in the forest and nobody heard them. Right. So I think there's a maturation process there of like learning the creative process. Like, I got to enjoy what I'm doing here, because I have no idea. I don't get to control the outcome. I don't get to control whether people like it or not. So
it is all about process. And I think the big mistake that people make when they say, hey, I want to chase my dream, is they're thinking about the cherry on top of the sundae, and that or they're thinking about the view from the top of the mountain, and they're not thinking about the climb up there, because what you're committing to when you quit your job is the climb. It's not the view. You're lucky if you get the view. The climb is what your days are, Monday through Friday or Sunday through Saturday, depending upon how much of your life you're going to commit to it. And if it's you want to go and become a famous musician, well, you got to learn how to play that guitar. You want to it's the time on the range if you want to be a golfer, and that's 40 hours a week for 10 years. If you want to be a triathlete, that's 100,000 push-ups and 10,000 miles and bloody nipples and chafed taint for years before you're even competing with people that you aspire to compete with.
Bloody nipples and chafed taint. I just kind of felt something come up when you brought that in. Okay.
Yeah, I already own that website, so don't go to
rate my bloody nipples and chafed taint. But that's it. Like, and that's what you're describing is a death march for some, and it's inspiring for others, right? I think that's where if we have this image in our head of like who we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to become, then we might put ourselves on that death march in order to create that. Or it might be like, hey, I actually enjoy this process. It looks kind of nutty to other people, but this is what I enjoy doing. But that's what I want to help people come back to, is that internal authority system instead of what should I be doing, that external thing of like, this is how you should live and this is how you should do it, and have the guts to really live from that place of like, God, can I really do what I enjoy doing and give myself permission to do that?
You can. Another mistake that I think I made before I quit my job was not looking at the value that I was getting from the work I was doing in the corporate world. I wasn't giving myself permission to realize that I was doing a pretty good job there, and that I was getting a lot of income that didn't show up on my paycheck. And that came in the form of camaraderie and, working through challenges and growth in a cool industry, in about as cool a company as anybody ever worked at as cool a time in that company that anybody ever worked at. I think I let a lot of stuff get to me, the stress, the long hours, travel, et cetera, that prevented me from seeing a lot of the good stuff I was getting from work, and made me think that it was an all-in one way or the other kind of situation. And that's sort of something I learned by quitting my job, is that, oh, I had it pretty good. And it's not to say I would make the decision differently. It's just, I think I would have done it with a little bit more purpose and gratitude in the way that I conducted myself there and as I left the company.
So describe the scenario. You're in Facebook, and you had to have known, okay, I can cash out at any time and I'll be fine. Mm-hmm. Was it that you were struggling to just find motivation to stay in it, or did you feel called to the next thing, or what was it more like, to hell with this, I just want to get out of here? What was going on?
Some of all the above. So I came out of business school in 97 and went into the internet business, and I knew I wanted to be a comedian when I went to business school after I told jokes at a talent show. Very first semester in business school, and that is not the thing you want to learn when you borrow $100,000 to pay your tuition. That's not the job. You're hoping you're going to find out that you're a genius at investment banking or something like that. You don't want to find out, oh, hey, I'm the funniest guy in my class. Oh, great. That's got the lowest expected. And so anyway, I went
to MBA school to figure out that I was a comic. That one stings. Okay.
It's a tragedy. So I came out and I worked in the internet business, and I eventually paid off my student loans, and I worked at Yahoo and a company called Launch.com, which is a music website. And so I paid off my student loans, and I had been saying if I ever paid off my loans, I'd go do comedy full time, which I did for 2 years. And then I got engaged, and I decided that I needed to go back to work because I didn't want to be a deadbeat comic and, be a deadbeat husband, living off my wife's income. So I took a job at this little company called Facebook, and it was 250 people at the time, and I was selling ads on the West Coast in LA, and it was growing so fast. Every month we'd catch up. We'd get that much closer to Facebook or Yahoo in total audience, and it was an exciting place to work. I worked there for 4.5 years. I eventually ran the West Coast sales team, and in this time, the company went from like 25 million users to over 1 billion. I mean, the growth was meteoric. And it was either meteoric or Herculean. I can't remember which one, which would be more accurate. Okay. Probably meteoric. It was a really exciting place to work. It was super stressful. 250 people were doing the work of 1,000. And, I think after 4, and when you're working at a small company, one of the reasons you get compensated so well is because you're taking a risk. And you're betting on that something is going to grow. And one of the things the company doesn't have at that time is systems. They don't have, they don't have expense report systems that they've got today. You're doing your expense report on an Excel spreadsheet, and it takes 5 times longer than it would today. So you're just working in a more unrefined system than you are when you're working at a later stage company. Working at Facebook was super stressful. After about 4.5 years, my mom was sick. My wife was on bed rest with our second kid. They asked me to move, and I was basically like, you know what? I think I'm done here. Like, I'm not ready to commit to 3 more years. And I bailed, and I didn't think it through. I didn't go right back to comedy. I kind of goofed off for a couple of years. And it wasn't until I really locked eyes with what I felt I wanted to do with my life. The reason I didn't go back to comedy is because I was scared. I'd kind of already failed one time at it, and I didn't have the balls to say, this is really what I want to do. And it was only after kind of trying and failing a few other things that I was like, you've known the last 15 or 20 years that this is what you want to do. You either go and do it all in, or just let it go. Just forget about it completely. And I couldn't let it go. And that's how I got back into comedy 5 years ago.
It's interesting, right? Like that thing that knowing we have can be so confronting. It's also the place where we're scared to go sometimes. It's not like, oh, that's the easy thing and I'm being a hedonist because I'm only doing what feels good. It actually is this like, oh, if I go there, I'm vulnerable there, right? Especially with comedy, right? You just like going up there to tell jokes and you know, people call I died or I killed, right? It's such a violent place, right?
It is.
But
that.
so you come out of there, you said you goofed around for 2 years. So that sounds like a miserable 2 years though, of being rudderless. And I'm imagining what was that like to be like, who am I now? What's my life like now?
Yeah, well, it wasn't terrible in the sense that, I mean, you know, let's be honest. I did leave Facebook. I had plenty of money, which was kind of a mind fuck of its own. You know, like you think that once you make a certain amount of money, that life is just going to lay itself out for you and that your direction will become clear. And that's not what happened. But I mean, when things were confusing, yes, but I also had young kids, I had a nice house. I was, you know, working out, losing weight, traveling, like, you know, living what you do right out of when you quit your job. You're like, I'm going to get back in shape. I'm going to reconnect with friends. And I did all that stuff. That was good. But it was like at a certain point you go, okay, so what now? Who am I now? What do I stand for and where am I headed? And so it was rudderless in that way. But I think it kind of took me that much time to say, to really find, to realize that comedy thing is really what was bugging me and eating at me. And as an old friend of mine, Al Bott, who is my friend and former coach, said, look, comedy is a phone ringing for you. You can either pick it up and you're not in control on what's on the other side of that call, but you can either pick it up or just ignore it ringing. And I decided eventually I finally decided to pick it up. And, you know, like you said before about process, I'm not in control of what's on the other side of that phone. I'm not in control of outcomes. I'm in control of putting in as productive days as I can put in to try to make myself better at comedy. I'm in control of that process. And I think once I committed to that process, things really started to kind of feel right. Even though I don't know where it's going, I'm committed to giving it my best.
Why, for you, why were you resisting that call? What was the excuses you were telling yourself for like, nah, not comedy?
Fear, uncertainty.
Of what though? Like what was
fear? Well, fear of failure, fear of making no money, fear of being thought a fool. I've wasted a lot of time in my life worrying about what other people think. And that's just probably the most unproductive energy I've ever spent. But fear of not being successful at it, and also the very real opportunity cost. You know, I'm still losing money at comedy 5 years in, because if you want to travel, you know, even if you're working on the weekends, you know, maybe you make $300 or $400 for the weekend at a club out of town. Well, you're still going to spend $500 to $800 or $1,000 traveling. Right. So you're still losing money. And I'm, the only thing I'm certain about right now, other than the fact that I'm committed to doing it, as I'm, it's clear I'm losing money. It's not clear what the future outcome will be, that it could be something very, very profitable. And I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think it had that potential. But I try not to focus on the only thing that I know, because it's negative, and it's, you have to focus not just on what you absolutely know, but on what could be. And it was the fear of all those things that kept me from doing it. And I still struggle with fear. Yeah. It's just that I'm more familiar with it, and I really am trying to. I believe you've had Ryan Holiday on the program here, and you know I'm a daily Stoic guy. I'm reading all the a whole bunch of Stoic literature to focus to release attachment to outcomes and just focus on those things that we're in control of. And so, yeah, so fear's a big obstacle, but it's something that can be overcome. And the things I was afraid of 4 or 5 years ago around comedy, I'm a whole lot less afraid of now. Being told no almost feels good. It's almost like, you know, all these. I put it out there. You know, I for example, I was looking for an agent for a book that I'm shopping, and I sent out, I don't know, 60 emails. And I'd get, 59 no's or ignored, or ignores. And it's almost like you look forward to being told no a little bit. It's sort of like, oh, I can't wait to see what this one has to say about it. you're just appreciative that when they respond at all.
Yeah.
And the more you're told no, the more it kind of, I don't know, at a certain point, it goes from being depressing to becoming a motivator, to being like, come on, what else can you give me?
Right. There's a lot in there I want to pick out, because I think that's the part of us that, if we look earlier what we were talking about, which is like, it's just so easy to let making money be the prime directive in our life.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you say is like, when you start to take money off the table a bit and relax that, then there's this bigger existential question of, well, who am I really? Like, what am I really here to do? And that's a really confronting question, because it's like, shit, I'm really vulnerable now. If I were to say, I'm really here to be a comedian, or I'm really here to be a whatever Little League coach, or I'm here to be a knitting, or whatever that thing is, there's that place where we're now can be really judged on a painful level. It's one thing if it's like, hey, I'm just doing what everybody else is doing and I'm making a living in a corporate environment or whatever. But that, I think there's that part of like, this is who I am really, that really challenges us, that scares us. And I love how you said you crossed this threshold into the thing you were trying to avoid started to become energizing for you. It's not like you welcome it. It's not like, yeah, I hope I get a no today, but it's just like, wow, I'm still here. I still have energy and vitality here. Yeah. I'm still in the game. I'm still playing it. I find that relaxing. I don't know. I find that invigorating too when I get no's for things that I'm doing. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm in rarefied air. There's not a lot of people that do what I do. And this is the kind of cool challenge you get to have at this level, because you're not dicking around groveling on the ground for all the other scraps that people are picking up. Does that make sense? Like, I like those challenges. I like that I'm getting no's to those challenges versus some of the other things.
I think a no is more like, okay, they're not on board with what I'm talking about. And when you find people that do get you, it's so energizing to find fellow travelers, to find your tribe, and to say, oh yeah, okay, we're talking about the same stuff. This person is hearing me. Yeah. And I think less about this person saying no as being, they think I'm dumb or crazy or a dilettante. They're just not on the same wavelength as I am. And that's okay.
And we want to polarize quickly. You don't want to get into 6 months, 8 months, or a year with that person and go, wow, they really don't get it. You want to get that quickly.
Yeah, you do.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And so as you're wading into this next phase of your life and you're stepping into comedy, it's not really just about the money. It sounds like you still got an eye on it, right? About where this is going. But tell me about the process now. I mean, is money still a big driver for you, or have you learned how to put it in its place? What's it look like for you now in your life?
Well, I want to don't let me not address the money question, but you said before about what I am as a comedian. I think the way I think about it is coming back to say, who are you? What are your values? Is the place to start. And being a comedian is an expression of my values, and one of my values is to tell the truth. And in comedy, you have the opportunity to speak the truth in a way that you can't in many other formats, certainly not in the corporate world. Now, there's ways to express your values as a corporate person also. They're just different than the way you can do that as a comedian or as a writer or as a podcaster. And so I don't think of, my identity as a comedian. I think that's one of the ways that I express my values. And the way I think about money is another one of those values, is to say, okay, what do I want from money? Well, I interviewed a guy named Brian Portnoy a couple of weeks ago, and he wrote a book called The Geometry of Wealth. Scott Galloway just wrote a book called The Algebra of Happiness. He's a guy at NYU, so I was getting those two confused. But Brian Portnoy defined wealth as funded contentment. And I thought that was a really interesting way to come at it, to say, I know what it takes for me to be content in my life. And that's a certain standard of living that provides me the opportunity to, fill in the blank for you, live in a certain kind of home environment, to feed my kids, to, pay for their education, and maybe take a certain number of trips every year. And that is what it means to me to be content. Beyond that, money's a luxury. Below that, it's pain. So how do I fund that amount of contentment that I need in my life to live the kind of life that I want to live and to provide for my family the way I want to provide? So those aren't my thoughts, but I thought that was, I'm collecting wisdom along the way. And that was, I thought, a pretty elegant way to present the way to think about money. And I think that's sort of the way I'm coming at it. Fortunately, I kind of won the lottery at Facebook, and not $100 million, but I've got a pretty tasty nest egg that I could blow through if I was an asshole, by the way. And if my wife and I weren't on the same page, or if we decided to live way above our means, it's certainly expendable. So what I want from money, today isn't necessarily to get more of it, but to be able to live this life that I want to live, and do the things that I want to do creatively. The hope to make money in the future from a creative process isn't so much for the money itself, but as an indication that the way I'm living my life, the creative work that I'm doing, is creating value for other people. And I think when you start to see that come in, you say, okay, people are digging what I'm putting out there, and it's creating value to the extent that I'm building an audience, I'm building a following. People are looking forward to my take on the world, and they're willing to throw $20 at it for an evening out. They're willing to share my podcast with their friends, and that done at scale builds a monetizable audience.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, the contentment piece, because it doesn't seem like, I've never worked in the corporate environment, but it doesn't seem like a place where they would encourage contentment, because they need you to go up the ladder, right? So it's like, you can't be happy here. You got to strive for this next level. Was contentment a bad word in some of the circles you were running in? Or, because I can hear it like contentment's like a weakness, like, oh, you can't be satisfied. You got to always be striving and always be pushing. Contentment's the enemy kind of thing. What talk about contentment there from your perspective in the past?
Well, I don't think I put a lot of thought into it in the past. And, when I came out of business school 20 years ago, my thought was, I'm going to work my ass off until I make money. And, I kind of was like, burn it at both ends until you get what you want. And I never thought of work as a 40 or 50 year, marathon. Now maybe that's why I burned myself out a little bit. But I do think that corporations are putting a lot of more effort into helping people become content or happy at work, because they have to, and I want to say that Facebook was one of the most progressive in all the positive ways, progressive work environments that is trying to give people their employees the power to be happy people, while contributing to the growth of that company. Now, there's a certain amount of work that goes into being a senior level person in almost any company today that pushes the boundaries of balance in a way that I don't think has been done before. But I look at my friends who are still in the media world, and they're flying all over the world every month. I don't see how they have time to be present at home in a way that I want to be.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a challenge, and I don't think, certainly not at Facebook, they wouldn't say that contentment is a bad thing. They always want you to push the boundaries professionally, but they have a great stake in making sure that people have can find a way to make working in their company work for them as human beings as well.
Okay, because I've talked to some folks that are especially in tech industries, where there's this thing where the commitment is to success, but it's not to feeling strong. So when I ask them, say, what are your commitments? And we look at their actions on a day-to-day basis, they're not even the basics. Like they eat like shit. They don't get enough sleep. They don't spend time with family. Their commitment is to, quote, success, right? They're addicted to that, I got to get up the ladder thing, but we look at their life and they're making themselves weak. And that's really challenging for them when we look at it through that lens. It's like, yeah, look at how you're choosing to be weak so you can be successful. And that's a wild thing. So I take the word contentment out of there, because that's part of like, they kind of snarl their lip at like content. I got something to prove. But that, so it was interesting to like try to get your perspective on that, because they see where they're making themselves weak. They cut themselves off from other people in their lives, and all, like you said, the people jet setting everywhere, and it's just they don't give themselves that firm foundation to enjoy what they actually have.
Mm-hmm. I think that comes back to knowing yourself and knowing the things that are going to make you a more balanced and happy person. Or maybe some guys don't want balance; they want the next rung. There were certainly times in my career where I was like, I want that promotion, Why? I don't know. Because I deserve it. Because I think it should be mine. Because it gives me some status, maybe some more money. You know, I hadn't given a whole lot of thought to what that would end up doing for me. I just wanted to get to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what we're supposed to do as you know, guys. We're kind of like sharks, you know, you just keep swimming.
Yeah. Keep going. I'm curious for you, it being in a background in the corporate environment, you were a comedian, you go into the corporate world, and what happened to your humor, your sense of humor? Were you able to, did you have to like put it in a box and stuff it in the closet somewhere? Or like, how did that work? Because for me, I've got to be able to play, right? I've got to be able to see the light side of and make fun of everything, because if I take shit too seriously, man, I'm a goner. So what was it like for you in that environment? Were you able to spread your comedy wing, your humor, your playfulness?
Yeah, I tried. I mean, I think, you know, there's a weird thing happening in the corporate world today where, and I'm talking about the entire corporate world, that on one level, they want you to bring your best self and your whole self to work. On the other hand,
just not the shit that's going to scare us, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. On the other hand, you better not say the wrong thing, or you're going to end up down in HR, you know? And so, I don't know, man. It's kind of a conundrum. You know, I tried to bring fun stuff to work. I was kind of an intense person in the office, and I could have, I think there were some of my buddies after I left told me that there were the two Pauls that would show up, either like happy Paul or intense Paul, who was worried about, you know, the quarterly numbers, you know, but I'd like one time I gave my team their quarterly quotas on airline barf bags, which I thought was pretty funny. And, you know, I'd incorporate humor where I could in presentations and stuff. But I think were I to go back in time, I would try to bring more of a lighthearted team building thing to the table more than I would just laughs. Although I always did my best to try to keep it funny, if not fun.
I think there's an artful way to bring play into whatever we do. I think play gets at least playfulness gets kind of a bad rap when it comes to our work. Like, it's like, oh, I can be playful over here and I can be playful over there, but when it comes to work, I got to be really serious. But I think if we can bring a playfulness to things, we loosen up and we get more creative. And I think we're way better. But I can tell when my I've just completely lost playfulness. I'm just miserable. It's like, oh, I haven't laughed at anything in a while. I haven't looked at this from an angle to see where I can make fun of whatever it is I'm doing, even though it's still really important. How do I make fun of it? Like when I can do that stuff, there's so much more power available to me. And I know not everybody's like that, but I sense that you're probably like that.
I mean, well, first of all, don't pretend that the comedy world doesn't have its fair share of uptight douchebags in it. So the corporate world does not have a monopoly on backstabbers. But I do find, looking back, I think playing loose would have been, and I say play loose, I mean playing relaxed, not playing ethically loose, but like, playing loose with the spirit of playfulness is key. And when I get uptight, when I get scared, when I find myself feeling sorry for myself about not making progress as fast as I'd like to, I have to remind myself, like, hey, if this isn't fun, you shouldn't be doing it. You're doing this because it's a joy, and you get to make people laugh. And if you're not making them, if you don't feel good about yourself, if you're not having fun, they're not going to have fun. So relax. This is comedy. Have a good time. And when I remind myself to do that, I get the best results.
I'm glad to hear that, because I've followed comedy, for years and years, and it was always such a drag to hear that some of the people that made me laugh were really, really unhappy people and were pretty miserable in their lives. And it was like, God, man, they made me laugh so much, but they couldn't find that joy for themselves. And that's it's I know there's a lot of darkness and underneath a lot of the laughs, but I love that you're able to clue into that.
There's some don't get me wrong, there's great people too, men and women out there that are a lot and most of the time it's a lot of fun to hang out in the green room with a handful of other comics that come from all different walks of life. And you're sitting there, at 11:30 on a Friday night, eating tater tots with people from completely different backgrounds of completely different ages. But the thing you have in common is that you all have this shared sickness that is the desire to, like the compulsion to make other people laugh. And it can be pretty damn funny back there.
Oh, that's cool. I'd love to be able to eavesdrop on some of that. So tell us about, you got a new EP, is that right? Tell us about that.
I do. Yeah. I recorded a set in New York City in December, and I put it out on iTunes last week. It's on Spotify and a few other music outlets as well. And it's called Alive on the Upper West Side. Alive as in like breathing.
Kiss
walking.
Alive. Kiss Alive 1 and 2.
Kiss
right?
Alive. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's kind of you can tell I grew up in the 70s. I should have waited until I had enough material for a double album,
You
like
should do that, and then like it's
the
just
poster that you can
the
pull
4
out.
pictures of you in the paint, like it's just like okay. And then you've got your podcast, Crazy Money. What do you got? What are you discussing on there? What are the topics you guys are, other than insanity and money, I assume?
Insanity is insanity comes in because it's sort of like, well, in what ways do we make ourselves crazy about money? And I think that's we can discuss in many different manifestations. The idea is that I believe we'll all make better decisions about money if we're aware of what we want from it, kind of what we were talking about before. And the first step in finding out what we want from money is to talk about it with ourselves, with our loved ones, with the people around us, completely in a respectful way, in the way that is going to help us know ourselves better and our desires better, and help us really invest in the things that actually bring happiness and not just status or whatever. So I've had some amazing guests. I've had, Dr. Drew was an early guest. Ron Lieber from the New York Times, who wrote a book called The Opposite of Spoiled, it's all about how to teach kids value through the lens of money. I had my 92-year-old father on, as I'm pretty sure I mentioned earlier. One of my upcoming episodes is with a friend of mine who was smuggled out of Vietnam when she was 4 years old in a fishing net and spent 2 years in a refugee camp.
Wow.
And now lives in an 8,000 square foot house on the top of a hill in San Diego. And it's like, well, what was that journey all about? And I mean, I don't think we think about these things on a day-to-day basis. We're like, hey, that person you see, walking down the street or in the gym or at the yogurt shop, is like, what's her story? What's her journey been all about? What can I learn from that might make me more aware of how fortunate I've been in my own life, or might make me want to work harder or just be more grateful for the stuff that I have.
Great. Okay. Paul Ollinger, you can look him up wherever you get your comedy online, Spotify. Where else did you say? In Apple? Is that right?
iTunes as well, yeah.
iTunes. And then the Crazy Money podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Paul, thanks so much, man. I feel like we're kindred spirits here. I love what you're doing and look forward to seeing you doing more.
I appreciate it, Tripp. Great to talk to you.
If these interviews are helping you, then please visit The New Man on iTunes and leave us a positive review so others can discover the show more easily. Thanks for listening.